Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and start with chapter 17. In chapter 16, Marley and her sister Judy received the news that they are going to be separated because Judy will be sent away. In chapter 17, her parents drop her off, and then Marley decides to go to Liz's church. So let's read and find out what happens. Okay. In the middle of the night, I woke up and went into David's room. Judy was curled up on the bed. Her suitcase was packed on the floor beside her. In the morning, she'd be leaving, just like David had done, just like Liz. After a moment, she rolled over and looked at me. "You can't sleep either?" I shook my head. Without a word, she picked up her blanket and came back into our room, the one we had shared ever since I'd been born. She lay down on her old side of the bed. Soon I heard her quiet, even breathing, but I still couldn't sleep. Not until the sky began to lighten and I heard Pretty Boy stir under his cover. My stomach hurt something awful the next morning. I wanted to stay home from school, but I didn't have a fever, so I knew Mother wouldn't let me. Daddy made a special breakfast, pancakes and bacon, but no one ate much. Judy's green suitcase sat by the door like a wart. "We'll drop you off at the bus station on the way to school," said Daddy. "I spoke to Granny last night. She'll be waiting for you in Pine Bluff." I stared at my plate, a half-eaten pancake wallowing in a pool of maple syrup. "Come on, girls," Daddy said quietly. "It's time to go." Mother gave Judy a hug and kissed her cheek. Daddy put Judy's suitcase in the trunk while Judy and I got in the car. All the way to the bus station, I rehearsed heartful goodbye scenes in my head. I would say something like, "Goodbye, dearest sister of mine." And Judy would burst into tears, and Daddy would be so touched he'd relent and take us all home. But what actually happened when we reached the bus station was that Judy gave me a hug, I whispered bye, and then she was gone. I gave JT his homework as soon as I got to school. He didn't even notice that they were all wrong. After math class, I stayed in Mr. Harding's classroom again for lunch. I am actually going to go back and again highlight this. This tells me how Marley's feelings towards JT are changing, have changed, and will continue to change. After math class, I stayed in Mr. Harding's classroom again for lunch. In history, Sally was still retelling the story, though everyone at school must have heard it about 100 times by now. It was good gossip, sure. At least I might have thought so if I hadn't been about my friend. But Sally was acting like she was a hero who'd personally saved us from a Soviet invasion. It was ridiculous. All she'd done was go by the church and gone by the church. The Baptist church on South Chester. If Sally could go there, so could I. Maybe I could find Liz, talk to her. Maybe learning how or why or something would help me feel not quite so confused and alone. I pulled a piece of paper from my math notebook and thought for a moment. It would have to be a short note. No names, but somehow she'd have to know who it was from. I had an idea and scribbled furiously. "What are you writing?" Sally said. I shook my head. Nora snatched the note away before I could finish. I reached for it, but she jumped up and read it aloud. "You owe me a magic book. What does that mean? Asked Sally. Marley, are you studying to become a magician? Maybe she has an imaginary friend, suggested Nora. They both laughed. The bell rang, and Miss Taylor rapped on her desk. I didn't even bother trying to get the note back from them. It was short. I could just write it again. That afternoon, I rode my bike over to the Baptist church. I was worried about finding it since I'd never been there before, but I'm good at reading maps and I didn't have any trouble. It wasn't until I got there that I remembered that what my father had said about staying away from Liz. I glanced around the parking lot. Was someone going to jump out and call me a race mixer, steal my bike, and beat me up? But the parking lot was empty. Finally, I left my bike in the bushes and went inside. The Baptist church looked a lot like the Methodist one we went to. Pews, altar, a couple of stained glass windows. A colored man in a dark suit and tie came up to me. He had short hair, was clean shaven, and had that serious yet helpful expression on his face, just like the Reverend at our church. I wondered if they practiced it in the mirror between services. Hello, he said. I'm Pastor George. What can I do for you? I couldn't believe my luck. Pastor George was Betty Jean's husband and Daddy's friend. If anyone could help me, it would be him. I handed over the note. I'd folded it into quarters and written, To Liz, Elizabeth, on the front. His smile faded when he read the name. She doesn't go here, he said, and handed the note back to me. That's when I realized he knew exactly who I was looking for. Elizabeth is a real common name, and he didn't even ask me what her last name was. Not that I knew it. I mean, she was listed on the rolls at school as Elizabeth Templeton, but I was pretty sure that wasn't her last name. I wasn't even sure if Liz was her real first name. Maybe it was really Wanda, or Darlene, or Phyllis. I'm sorry I can't help you, Pastor George said politely, though his tone made it clear I'm so sorry. Pastor George said politely, though his tone made it clear that what he really wanted was for me to go home. I unfolded the note and handed it back to him. He took it like it was the tail of a dead mouse. You owe me a magic book? Friday after school, the usual spot? She'll know what it means, I whispered. Pastor George gave me a funny look. Are you Richard Nisbet's daughter? I nodded. Sure hoped he wouldn't tell my father what I was doing. Pastor George still didn't smile, but his face softened a little. Youth group is tonight. I'll ask around. Thank you. And I went home to wait. Oh my goodness. What do you guys think will happen next? All right, this is the end of chapter 17.